Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dialogue. I'm Taimur Shamil. 2020 was a challenging year globally for all the nations, all the countries, and a challenging year for Pakistan as well. But the way Pakistan has fought this challenge, that too, I would say, is commendable, and that has been possible because of the unity that Pakistan has shown. The people of Pakistan, the government, the state of Pakistan, collectively, that the way we have been managing it. There is also a slight rise of cases recently, and we call it the second wave of COVID-19. We all have to certainly take care of ourselves and the people around us, our family members, our friends, and everybody. These are the challenges in which Pakistan has been working on its goals, primarily on its foreign policy goals, economic goals, and national security goals. We saw many challenges for Pakistan as well as opportunities when we talk about Pakistan's foreign policy and national security. Starting with what has been happening in Afghanistan, the peace and security and stability in Afghanistan is Pakistan's prime concern. Pakistan would like to see a peaceful Afghanistan and peaceful and at peace with itself and with its neighbors as well. The way looking at the security situation in Afghanistan, that is precarious, I would say. Still, there have been attacks, sporadic attacks, rather rampant attacks in Afghanistan, in which many innocent people have lost their lives. The violence continues. Pakistan has the Pakistani Prime Minister, for that matter, when the Taliban were visiting Pakistan, he said that Prime Minister Imran Khan, that Pakistan would like to see reduction in violence and peaceful solution to the issue that is going on in Afghanistan. Looking at the Indian side, we see rise of Hindutva, we see rise of extremism, we see rise of saffron tide in India. And recently, when Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi was visiting UAE, he made a very important presser in which he said that Pakistan has the information that India has been planning a surgical strike in Pakistan, and also that it was looking for its supporters for a nod, and Pakistan knows all these things, and if such kind of thing happens, Pakistan would give a befitting response. We will be discussing about Pakistan-India relations, as I just mentioned, Pakistan-Afghanistan relations as well, and also there are changes occurring in the Middle East. These changes are very different in nature. The way different countries have been managing with the political upheaval, I would say, with the way they are managing the challenges that they are facing in the Middle East. We'll be discussing about that. So Pakistan's foreign policy, more sort of a roundup of Pakistan's foreign policy in 2020, and then we'll be discussing about our way forward for Pakistan's foreign policy specifically in 2021. The challenges and the opportunities that are there for Pakistan, and the way we can tap the potential that is there for Pakistan, the opportunities that are there for Pakistan. We are joined by Lieutenant General retired Naeem Lodhi, a former Defence Minister of Pakistan and renowned senior analyst. So, welcome to the program. Our guest in the studios, Dr. Manzoor Afridi, a renowned senior academic and expert on Pakistan's foreign policy and international relations. Welcome to the show, Dr. Afridi. We're also joined by Syed Muhammad Ali, renowned analyst on Pakistan's national security and expert on regional and global affairs. Welcome to the show,
Thank you.
Mr. Ali. I'll start with General Lodhi, talking about Pakistan's foreign policy. As I just mentioned, there have been challenges and there have been opportunities. And
Right.
let's talk about them one by one, starting with India and starting with the pressure mainly that Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi mentioned in UAE. I remember we also discussed this issue in our previous programs as well. But looking at this issue from a perspective of a roundup of Pakistan's foreign policy, General Lodhi, how do you see the challenges that are there for Pakistan when we talk about India? Rise of saffron tide, rise of BJP, aggression from the Indian side. How Pakistan has been dealing with this aggression, with these challenges in 2020? How do you evaluate this?
Thank you very much. I'm sure you'll allow me a minute to just express my view, and this is a general view. I mean, not my view, that any foreign policy of any country is dependent on the world's political framework. and then the regional political framework. And there are many factors which are not in your control as far as international politics are concerned, as far as regional politics are concerned. So, keeping that in mind, we had COVID, we had economic problems the world over. Then, coming closer to the region, we know that America decided to partner with India as their strategic partner. And then India decided to do what they have done in Kashmir, and then also what they decided to do, what they are doing with their neighbors and internally. So, seeing all that, Pakistan, I think, kept on doing its bit and kept on responding and responding well, because we opened our channels to Central Asian countries and even to Russia. China was already our friend. We have also improved a bit on the Iranian side. I'm talking about the neighbors. Yes, we could not do much as far as the atrocities in Kashmir are concerned, but we have succeeded immensely in letting the world know what Indians are doing in Kashmir. And now at least this thing is very clear to the world. And the other thing which is very clear to the world is that the movement which is going on in illegally Indian occupied Kashmir is indigenous movement, basically political movement, and some kinetics involved in that. So in this setting, I think Pakistan has done well, because these Middle East countries, which you talked about, they are under the influence of a certain superpower, and that superpower is leaning towards India. So you can't expect those countries which are under a very strong influence of the superpower that they will side with you, because of other factors, which are also quite strong factors. I mean, our affinity with the people of Middle East, whatever we have done in the fields of training and in building these countries, everybody knows that. So I'm quite confident that this small hiccup which we are watching is going to, not last long. But coming back to India, I think nature has also helped us in a way that Indian decision makers have taken such decisions which are non-tenable. I mean, they can't continue with that, and which those decisions have made them weak. And also their decision to try to create a standoff with China, that has also helped us. Whatever decision they took about their internal citizenship, that has also helped us. But yes, whatever they have done to Kashmir, occupied Kashmir, and the violations, ceasefire violations, continuous ceasefire violations, more than 3,000 of them in this year, that probably is our weakness. So India is not in a position to do something very bad to us because of the factors I've already mentioned. But we have also not done very well as far as help extending a worthwhile help to our brothers in Kashmir, occupied Kashmir, and also this befitting reply mantra. I don't really contribute to that, because befitting reply, in my opinion, I've given this definition many times in your program. Befitting reply means that the same thing is not repeated again. So if it is being repeated every day, so the reply is not befitting, and we have not been able to alleviate the problems of the Kashmiri brethren. Otherwise, we have kept India at its place mainly because of their own doing, and also because of our foreign policy endeavors, and especially the folder, Kulbhushan Yadav, and now some natural things have happened. Nature has come to our support, which I said, their decisions, and also EU disinformation lab, etc.
That's right.
So all in all, I would say that we are doing all right as far as India is concerned.
As far as India is concerned, Dr. Afridi, Janlodi just mentioned the EU Disinfo Lab, and talking about this new front that Pakistan is fighting on, that is very important. I mean, India would go to any extent. They would use the media ecology, they would use fake accounts, they would use fake websites and NGOs, and interestingly, they would manage to tap these fake accounts in UN and EU for that matter. The way India has been exposed by the EU Disinfo Lab, how important it is for the Pakistani foreign policy apparatus and the national security apparatus to also keep a check on the way India is trying to discredit Pakistan in the media ecology and also on the digital side.
Shamil Saab, very interesting question, and it is a debate where we can generate more discussion on it. I mean, that since the coming into power of Bharatiya Janata Party and also Narendra Modi as Prime Minister, so we have experienced all the atrocities the Indian government has done, and still that is going on in Indian Hill Kashmir, and all the discrimination in India, what is against the Muslims or other minorities. So of course, I mean, since the last year, the 5th August, the abrogation of the 370 and 35A articles of the Indian Constitution and have it snatched the right from the Kashmiri people. So then the Pakistan's, I would say, a successful diplomacy in the sense that it exposed the Indian face to the outside world, that what was happening there. But yes, that the support what Pakistan wanted together, it was not that much, but the exposure of the Modi atrocities and the policies over there, it was very much important. Second thing, that the Modi Sarkar was not allowing the human rights bodies and the media outlets to report over there, and
Amnesty International India,
yes,
their office was closed over there,
and the media outlets to operate over there are to have free and fair reporting and a kind of media trial, we can say, but then they were not allowing it. On the other hand, Pakistan allowed so many times to visit the line of control, and also the Pakistan's administered the Azad Kashmir over there, what was the situation, and then they could compare very easily. So I think since the last year, it was an opportunity what Pakistan got to expose the Indian face to the United Nations, to other regional bodies, and also the European Union. And now as the European, let me tell you that one of the fundamental principles even to join the European Union, that is to have very good human rights record, right? So they are concerned about it, and of course they have their own stakes in South Asia. Now Pakistan has to lobby for it in business community, in diplomatic channels, and also in media and in academia, right, and artists. So everywhere what Pakistan can use, and just to expose more the Indian face that this is the real situation, what was going over there in India, and how we can deal it. And the international players, the great powers, the United States, they have to come here and to see the situation that yes, now it can be, you know, a kind of a tussle between the two nuclear powers, India and Pakistan, over the Kashmir issue or over so many other issues between the two states.
We'll be discussing about that. But Mr. Ali, talking about this international system, the environment that we are operating in, the way India managed the fake accounts, the way India managed these fake accounts for having lobbying in EU and UN, that is very alarming, I would say. We discussed that earlier as well. But how do you see the way India has been using these fake accounts, undermining the sanctity of UN and EU? What are the options for Pakistan?
Thank you, Taimur. I think if you allow me briefly to just cap the year generally in terms of the world order, I think the international peace, security and stability is more precarious than ever before. And in that context, to appreciate that is essential in order to compare how well Pakistan as a state has done. So Pakistan as a state, despite global, regional and national challenges, has done quite well. And why I'm saying that, because as Dr. Saab has rightly pointed out, and just to follow up on that, globally I think if you look at the world situation in 5 contexts. Number 1, ideologically the conflict is more intense than ever. Geopolitically, the competition is deeper than ever. Geoeconomically, we see polarization between BRI on one side and Indo-Pacific strategy on the other side. And in these 3 contexts, you see the distribution of wealth and hard power based on realignment of strategic alliances. So this and COVID actually offered a great opportunity for the world powers, right, to act responsibly to help the humanity, but they failed to do that. So that further reinforces the concern of the international community that the world knowledge and resources are not being used for humanity, but for geopolitical interests. And in this context, India's role, the US role is evident that instead of allocating their resources and power and using their influence to help humanity, both domestically and globally, they are using their hard power to coerce the other countries. India, instead of managing the COVID crisis, which they have very badly managed, is looking for the external diversions, either through coercion or isolation or through some line of control aggression, and also their military buildup. I was just doing some research before I came to your show. In the 2020 year, India carried out 14 tests of its ballistic missiles. So instead of helping their humanity, which is suffering both economically, politically, socially, and medically, they are using their resources for their military buildup and wasting their resources. That is very important. Right. So in this context, I think Pakistan has done very well. Very briefly, I think diplomatically, we are more relevant than before. We have balanced, recalibrated our foreign policy. We are not very close to the US, but our relationship with rising China, with resurgent Moscow and Washington are more balanced. We are more close to China than ever before. Right. But our relations with Moscow have also improved. In terms of the region, I think with Nepal, with Bangladesh, with Iran, with Afghanistan, with Sri Lanka, our relations are improving. So Indian attempt to isolate us regionally has also failed. In Muslim world as well, although there has been some concerns regarding our relations with the Arab world, but I think it is more than compensated by our closer relations with Turkey, with Malaysia, and improving relations with Afghanistan and Iran. So I think that is the diplomatic aspect. Politically, I think our civil-military relations are also very balanced. So that provides a fulcrum of political stability in the country. Lastly, in terms of economy, I think 2019 was the year of damage control. 2020 is an year of economic repair, and hopefully next year will help us improve our economic growth once we recover from the COVID crisis.
This is very interesting. We'll discuss on this economic point, which is very important, and you rightly just mentioned. General Lodi, talking about Afghanistan, we talked about India. The security situation over there, United States' longest war anywhere ever is Afghanistan. How do you see the future of the peace in Afghanistan? And keeping in mind that what is happening in Afghanistan is very important for Pakistan. Looking at the potential of the region, having peace in Afghanistan would mean huge potential, economic potential for the region. How do you see this?
If history is, as we say, is a good teacher, Afghans have always resolved their issues under two, you can say, broad spectrums. One, that we must leave it to themselves, and we must keep facilitating them externally up to an extent where how much they want, because they are fiercely independent people. They don't really want interference beyond a certain level, and I think Pakistan has understood that very well. And we are saying for a very long time that we do not have any favorites. So one problem is going to get resolved as always. That is, once the external forces leave, there will be period of internal struggle. This time it is likely to be short. And why do I say that? Because those who want peace, they are more stronger this time. The people of Afghanistan, the Central Asian countries, Russia, China, Iran, Pakistan, versus India and some gun runners and some narcotic barons and some elements in the government who are having a Bollywood time under the crisis situation. So I think the peace is going to win, and probably is likely to win earlier than what happened before, because this time there is no vacuum. People keep on saying that again a vacuum will be created of the same type as it happened, and it is no. This time that sort of vacuum is not there. and I don't want to go into details. We can, your viewers can understand that what I am saying. But I think I have to say two things. One, that Pakistan has facilitated a lot as far as this peace process is concerned, as far as one issue is concerned, even trying to do its best to mend its relation with Afghanistan. But on the other hand, I would say that we have not been able to leverage our strategic position to an extent that we could have. I will not go into the details. We can have a separate program on that. And secondly, once we say that we have no favorites, we should not forget that there are a number of elements in Afghanistan and who has been doing what to us. So you cannot forget all that. So if one, that you must have a clear vision of the likely dispensation in Afghanistan, which in my assessment that Afghan Taliban are going to be the main stakeholders, very closely followed by Abdullah Group, the Northern Alliance, and some other Uzbeks and all that. And Ashraf Ghani Group is likely to be much smaller in its influence as far as the future of Afghanistan is concerned. And also, what Ashraf Ghani and its government and its intelligence agencies have been doing to us, we should not forget that. So this is saying is easier that we have no favorites, but forgetting history would be disastrous. That is one thing that I would say. And then secondly, if we are asked, which is very likely what I'm going to say, if we are asked by America to help them to keep their influence in Afghanistan, we should not fall in trap. This time we had enough of it.
Very interesting, very interesting. And Dr. Afridi, about Afghanistan, we want peace over there. Afghans want peace over there because Pakistan and Afghanistan have been the target of the terrorist organizations that have been operating over there. Recently, Jamaat-ul Ahrar, Hizbul Ahrar, TTP, for that matter, they have been specifically focusing on Afghanistan, on Pakistan. ISIS has been targeting people in Afghanistan as well as people in Pakistan. The Indian dossier that was presented by Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and DG ISPR, General Iftikhar Babar, that was pretty damning, I would say. Exactly and specifically naming those Indian officials who have been involved in instigating and financing the terrorist organizations that I just mentioned. How is Pakistan going to address this issue and bring up this issue with the Afghan authorities as well as with probably with the Americans, because they have their forces over there, they have the responsibility of what is going on over there. How do you think this issue as a part of the foreign policy that we are having with Afghanistan and with the US?
Shamil Saab, you rightly said that what is going on and what we have seen for the last 19 years since the launching of war on terror, and how Pakistan played a key role in this war on terror. So yes, all these things, I mean, it's not only related to Pakistan or Afghanistan. So it is the problem and it is a menace of the region. So terrorism in either form, of course, it is a threat for the regional peace. So on the one hand, there is United States. It's also claiming for the elimination of terrorism and to have operations against ISIS. But on the other hand, of course, there are some claims what Pakistan have made, and it has proofs that United States should acknowledge and should, start such operations against these groups, because if United States only want to safeguard its own national interests, so I think it will not work. I mean that if there is a problem in the region, so of course it can hit big the United States, and it was a guarantee what the Afghan Taliban have given to the United States government in its peace deal signed this year on 29th February. Right. Second thing, that now it's very good opportunity for Pakistan, for United States, even for the government of Afghanistan and some other regional countries to work together for the elimination of not only terrorism but other forms of other issues, whether that is poverty or the drug smuggling or whatever, right? Even China, Russia and some other, Iran, some other countries, they can join hands together in this regard. So the peace
For the
deal,
regional security,
yeah,
right.
regional security. The peace deal signed between the Afghan Taliban and the United States, it paved a way for more concrete peace in the region. And later on, we have also seen a dialogue between the Afghan Taliban and
Afghan
the
government.
Afghan government, right? So it was, I think, the one of the most difficult tasks,
Right.
right? Because every time we have seen that the talks between the Afghan government or the rebel groups with Soviet Union or with United States, that is easier than the talks among them, right? So now, of course, such kind of groups, if they operate over there, so it is a threat for Afghanistan as well as threat for Pakistan. And United States or United Nations, all the great powers, they have to assure that by having an agreement with a group or with a government, that's not necessary, but to have the elimination of such groups which can be a threat not only for a single country but for the whole region.
Very important, but Ali, we have seen in last 19 years, they couldn't eliminate TTP, Jamaat-ul Ahrar and all these terrorist organizations that I've just mentioned. Rather, we have seen more terrorist organizations coming up in Afghanistan, strengthening their stronghold over there, attacking Pakistan, targeting people in Pakistan, though we have been fencing the border. But my point is that what would be the future of security in Afghanistan and future of Pakistan-US cooperation while we talk about this, the security in Afghanistan?
Very important question, Taimur. Thank you. I think there are three factors which will determine the future, which makes me more skeptical about the future than my two friends here. One is that the current peace process essentially is led in an overarching manner by the Trump administration, which is outgoing.
Right.
And the Biden administration has already said that they are going to review the process. So there is a huge possibility, a serious one, that they will review the commitments made by the Trump administration to the Afghan Taliban. And that will not make Afghan Taliban very happy, because if they have invested some political capital in improving the relations or reducing the hostility with Washington, they will not be very keen on agreeing to tougher commitments that the Biden administration might expect. That's the first aspect. The second aspect is, since Pakistan is also one of the key states which has successfully brought all the stakeholders of Afghanistan together, it will become more complex for Islamabad to sustain this process once Biden administration comes in and looks afresh at the original arrangements which has been agreed as part of the Doha agreement, right, and also as part of the subsequent dialogues. The third spanner would be the expectation by Kabul. I agree with General Lodi that Pakistan's leverage and soft power is significant and will continue in Afghanistan. However, the Kabul administration will try to repair its relations with Biden administration and complicate the process vis-a-vis Afghan Taliban. So how this works out will be seen. And there are other outside factors, like, because there are other stakeholders like Iran, China, Russia, right, how they see Biden administration's role in Afghanistan will also be important. Lastly, I think the issue that my personal view is that whether the US forces depart or not, there is enough capacity of violence by proxy groups of different powers which has not been eliminated by either the US, by China, by Russia, by Pakistan, by Iran. Afghanistan remains a country which is rife with so many proxies which do not command, or do not swear their allegiance to any single major power. So unless that environment changes, ability of any single actor, whether it is Afghan or any extra-regional actor or even regional state, to bring a monopoly over power and sovereignty of Afghanistan in the foreseeable future would be a huge task. Right. And I don't see that becoming an immediate achievement in the short-term future.
Right, right. With the new administration in White House, things probably will change, as Ali just mentioned, and the future of Pakistan-US relations would also be something that we'll discuss after this break. We're going to discuss about Pakistan-US relations. New president-elect would be coming in White House, President Biden, and Afghanistan is a concern for both for Pakistan as well as for US. But at the same time, looking at the spoilers in Afghanistan, we have to see that where is Islamabad and Washington both are looking at each other, and where is the area of convergence, the element of convergence and divergence. After this break, stay with us. Welcome back. We are discussing Pakistan's foreign policy and Pakistan-US relations after the break. Jan Lodi, so we have a new president-elect in the United States. How do you see Pakistan-US relations in the future? As Ali just mentioned, pulling out troops from Afghanistan was Trump's main policy. He wanted to pull out troops from Syria and Afghanistan. And interestingly, this was a decision that was probably unpopular with Pentagon, with probably some senior officials from Pentagon, General James Mattis for that matter. So, but ultimately we have seen the reduction of troops in Afghanistan, pulling out troops from Syria. How is the Biden administration going to address the issue of Afghanistan, and where do you think that Pakistan and US are addressing this issue mutually?
Thank you very much. I think there's one historical fact that generals, they are quite reluctant in accepting their defeat. Politicians, they are more shrewd to understand what actually is going on the ground. So I think whatever Trump did, in my opinion, he did the right thing, because there was a stalemate both in Afghanistan and Syria, and they were just, wasting their energies and money. So he took the right decision, because he was a man who always kept his eyes on economy and internal affairs. So that way, I think that was a good decision in my reckoning. Of course, American interest aside. There are, one thing is that unless we agree on one or two basic, I would call it not a fact but an assessment. One is that the US campaign in Afghanistan failed. I'm not saying that US was defeated. No, it's a superpower, you can't defeat them. But they were having a net political economic losses in Afghanistan, and they have cut their losses. And secondly, the troops have been reduced to an extent that militarily I can say that the Rubicon has been crossed. And reversal of this process will not be easy, as many people are expecting that maybe Biden can slow down the process. Probably he will not be able to reverse this process. This is my, military assessment. Right. I do not insist on that. Maybe it is wrong. And the third thing is that this intra-Afghan dialogue thing, let me say that both sides, the Afghan government and Afghan Taliban, they are delaying this process of intra-Afghan dialogue, and for different reasons. Afghan government, they are dilly-dallying because they want the stay of American troops to get prolonged as much as possible, because that is what gives them the shield, both militarily and economically. Afghan Taliban, they really want that first, let the Americans vacate this area, the foreign troops vacate this area, and then they will deal with the Afghan government, because that makes their dealing easier with them. So whether this appeals to the viewers or appeals to you, my two friends sitting here or not, this is my assessment. So the situation is that now, and one thing I must also add that these other, this Tehreek-e-Taliban, Pakistan, and some other groups which are still fighting, and also maybe joined by some private contractors and all that. We were saying that they have not been able to curb them. They never wanted to curb them. I mean, the Indian influence was there, and Americans also wanted that they must have some nuisance value against Pakistan, and that is why they did not come. And we couldn't do it because we can't go across. Of course, whatever they were doing in our own country, we have done well. These groups, once we say that there is no peace in Afghanistan, it is not only because of America or Afghan Taliban or even the government, it is because of these groups. So once you say that Pakistan government was talking with the Afghan Taliban to reduce this violence, so you are talking to the wrong people. They are not the ones who are creating this lot of violence. You know, some violence is there because of them, but a lot of violence is because of other factors. So now what should Pakistan do and what I expect? I've already indicated that. I think because America is a superpower, and they have not only superpower from the political influence and military influence and economic influence, also from the media point of view, from the cutting edge technologies which they have. So they have a lot of ways of influencing. Like we are surrounded by FATF and IMF things and all that. So it will not be easy for Pakistan to refuse America if they want to keep their influence in Afghanistan through Pakistan, which I said is the danger which I am sensing, that Pakistan may fall in that pit once again because of our economic vulnerabilities. And they can, further accentuate that. They have a lot of, strings as far as that thing is concerned. And so I think Pakistan will have to weigh very judiciously on one side China, Iran, Russia, Central Asian countries. On the other side, the Afghan people, Afghan Taliban, and other factions, and also America. So my own assessment is Americans will try their best, but Pakistan should play very smartly and without annoying America, must not play their tune. Otherwise, we will be in thick soup once again, and there will be no peace in Afghanistan, because I always keep on saying, and let me reiterate it, Americans do not want peace in Afghanistan, and I have solid reasons to say that.
Right. Very interesting. Dr. Afridi, my last question on Afghanistan specifically, then we'll move on to our next topic, that is Middle East and the changes occurring in Middle East. Talking about Afghanistan, Pakistan in last 2-3 years has been very, I would say, proactive in pursuing its citizen diplomacy and public diplomacy with Afghanistan, opening hospitals at the border with Afghanistan, opening the Jinnah Hospital in Kabul for that matter, giving scholarship to the Afghan students. There is a lobby in Afghanistan which is lobbying against Pakistan. We have to address this issue as a part of our foreign policy, improving our relations with Afghanistan. What are the areas that you think that Pakistan should focus on when it comes to Afghanistan and the people of Afghanistan?
Well, very relevant, I think, to the current situation as well as to the future of Pak-Afghan relationship. So these two countries, they can't avoid each other. Of course, they are very much cemented, and they are bound together in so many areas, historically, culturally, religiously, and so on, so on. So that's why they have only one choice, that is cooperation. Yes, Pakistan has done, and Pakistan cooperated, facilitated the Afghan people. I mean, what you have mentioned, the announcement of the scholarships and the construction of hospitals and so many other things.
Yes,
but
and the trade that is going on.
Yes, and citizen diplomacy, and of course the Afghan journalists, Pakistani journalists, the Afghan students, and even the businessmen, they visit each other, and still that is going on. Even some few days back, I have seen one of my friend, he is journalist, he also visited Afghanistan for this purpose, just to come both people to come closer together, right? So this is the need of the hour. Now, what to do for a betterment of this region, especially for the Pak-Afghan relationship? I think that is the one thing, that is the border. I mean, that there, the Afghan people, of course, they have not those kind of facilities, especially the education and the health facilities, what we have here, right? So a kind of facilitation should be there on the border to facilitate them more and more, because by this, not only the governments, but people, they can come together. And second, the economic diplomacy. Pakistan should pursue more active economic diplomacy. There we have to, I mean, what Pakistan had a market in Afghanistan 15 or 16 years back, we don't have that market. And India was very much functional in that regard. And that's not only Afghanistan, but beyond that, there is Central Asia, so Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, very important countries. And now Pakistan is also a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Afghanistan is an observer state over there. TAPI project is there. CASA is there. So many other. For this reason, economic diplomacy already Pakistan has announced, but because of insurgency and because of so many other problems that was not materialized, the construction of motorway through Kabul, Afghanistan and reach to Tajikistan. So that is, very much, I think it has a huge potential for future, that how we can connect the Pakistan market with that of Afghanistan and also with Central Asia. And one thing more, the 9 special economic zones, especially the Russia-Kai economic zone under the China-Pakistan economic corridor, it can play, I think, very, very significant and instrumental role in this regard.
Certainly, and having peace in Afghanistan is, I would say, key to all these projects that you have just mentioned. Ali, talking about Middle East now, the changes that we see in Middle East are very interesting. UAE just recently formalized its diplomatic relationship with Israel, many other countries, Morocco in the line. The changes that are occurring in Middle East, how do you see it? And Pakistan's relationship with the Middle Eastern Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, they have been very strong, strategically very strong, I would say. They have affinity with these states, keeping in mind the Saudi-Iran, sort of rivalry as well. How do you see these challenges as well as the opportunities for Pakistan?
Taimur, I think Middle East is a very critical region for Pakistan for 3 reasons. One is the ideological and cultural and historical aspect, because we are one of the largest Muslim majority state. The second aspect is our energy security and the third aspect is our economic security. These 3 factors create a national security imperative to maintain a cordial, balanced, mutually beneficial relationship with all the major players of Middle East. Now, what's going on in Middle East is basically can be seen at 4 levels. Basically, the world order transformation is playing out very intensely in Middle East. Under the Trump administration, China and Russia perhaps made significant gains in terms of their geopolitical and geoeconomic influence in the Middle East. That has somewhat shaken the Beltway, and that was manifested because Trump administration initially, in its initial years, was reluctant to offer military commitment and security commitment to its allies. That translated in insecurity of its allies in the Arab world and created strategic opportunities and geopolitical opportunities for Russia and China to move in. And you see a thaw between Beijing and Tehran, and you also saw a thaw between Ankara and Doha, which was very significant. So I saw, my assessment is that the great power politics is playing out very intensely in Middle East. Now, what has happened at the state level, Turkey, Iran, Saudi Arabia and Israel have obviously emerged as major players. And my assessment is that perhaps the most interesting feature of 2020 is that Turkey has become a greater concern for the Arab countries than Iran in terms of geoeconomics and geopolitics, because Iran, although primarily relies on its proxies for its influence and creating discomfort for Arab adversaries, but you see Turkey actually projecting its military in Doha overtly, offering security commitments to Qatar and other countries. So that is something which has unnerved the Arab sheikdoms. So, the third level is the political system of these countries, and I see a growing insecurity among those countries which are led by undemocratic political systems, and that creates opportunities for great powers to exploit them politically, to sell them more weapons, because they are a huge market. And the third level and the last level is the non-state actors. I think the non-state actors and proxies are very active in Middle East, perhaps more active than ever before. And that further creates a dynamic which makes these states very unstable. Now, in this milieu, what Pakistan can do is the only option is to maintain balanced relationship, not to commit itself ideologically, politically, economically with any particular state, but maintain balanced relationship with Turkey, with Iran, with Saudi Arabia, with UAE. That is very important.
My last question, sir, very briefly, General Lodi, these blocks that we see somehow in the region, in the Middle East, and Pakistan's options, foreign policy options in the Middle East, how do you see it?
Agree with everyone who says that we should try to balance out as far as the relationships are concerned between various blocs, but we must ruthlessly pursue our own interests. In that, if a balance is lost to an extent, I think that we must swallow. That will be a price that one has to pay. Trying to balancing out in a way that compromising our own interest is going to be counterproductive. Now I'm talking in terms of Saudi Iran, in terms of Turkey, Saudi Arabia, in terms of America, China, in terms of Afghan Taliban and Afghan government, so all these entities. So trying to balance in a way that you start compromising on your own interest is not a very good policy, in my opinion. You have to assert yourself in certain areas. The only last thing I would say is that we have conducted all this discussion without any senior diplomat from Foreign Office. So whatever we have been saying is from the academic point of view and from pure military point of view, as far as I am concerned. So it remains a bit short of the total discussion. I think tomorrow you must carry out this discussion with certain diplomats, some serving and some retired.
So certainly this is a very important point, but of course we have our experts on foreign policy, academics who are very closely following foreign policy. Thank you for joining us. General Lodi, pleasure having you on the program. Dr. Afridi, thank you for joining us. Mr. Muhammad Ali, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. That is all from today's dialogue. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.